Hello, my name is Tori Smith, and this is the MyLab Child Trafficking Report for the 25th of April, which was Monday. 62 children were brought from 2 sources and then taken to 3 locations. 2 MyLabs in the basement of the White House. 20 children were brought in from a child trafficking agency called Child Protective Services, which is kind of typical for the United States government. They usually project the exact opposite of what they're doing. You know, land of the free, it's all bullshit. The United States is considered the same country as England. 20 children were abducted from Georgia by CPS and given to the CIA, which took them to the Atlanta MyLab for delivery. CPS raped 6 of these children a total of 9 times. ICE, another child trafficking agency, which mostly works on the southern border, 42 children were collected over the weekend and taken from Mexican parents. The parents were all taken to the Nazi Concentration Camp near Yuma, Arizona, which the dark side calls a FEMA campground. These children were taken to Los Angeles MyLab number 2, and then they were distributed to other locations. Now, the Pentagon got 31 of these children, and they were gang raped by a group of 462 males, a total of 1,191 times. And these were all Pentagon employees, and they were all killed by reptilians. In Washington, D.C. MyLab number 1, 27 children were gang raped by a group of 217 males, a total of 507 times. 45 other Pentagon employees went to this one. And 12 United States senators, 4 of their aides, 18 Secret Service, 10 CIA, 13 FBI, 10 Department of Homeland Security, 3 DARPA, DC police officers, state police officers from 3 different states, and the rest were corporate executives and CEOs. And most of these men left the room while they were murdered by reptilians. And 4 of these children were taken to the basement of the White House. Which is very common. I think since, I wrote it down somewhere, I just sent a notice to the White House about the next group of children gang raped and murdered in the basement. These 4 children were gang raped by 62 males, a total of 138 times. Now, they were also raped other times before they got to the White House. Barack Obama, it's clone number 10, Joe Biden clone number 8, John Brennan clone number 19, John Boehner, Governor George Pataki of New York, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and California Governor Edmund Brown. There were 14 Secret Service agents, 10 White House staff members, 6 CEOs of war criminal contracting companies, 3 executives from the war criminal Halliburton Company, and 4 from the Monsanto, which, everyone knows is just a bunch of filthy, lying murderers. 6 from DARPA, 4 CIA, 2 FBI, and the rest were Army Special Ops. And I thought for sure that I wrote down how many children had been murdered I guess I just sent it in the note. I researched how many children have been gang raped and murdered in the basement of the White House since Obama was criminally installed, because even by the corporate United States laws, Mr. Obama wasn't qualified to be president because he was not born or, hatched in the United States. He was hatched in Africa. And then the rest of him was created in a lab. And these 4 children, first there was a 4-year-old boy from Atlanta, Georgia. His name was Tyler. Tyler was raped 76 times since he was abducted by the child trafficking company. And he was murdered by Barack Obama. Child number 2 is a 5-year-old boy from Marietta, Georgia, named Kerry. Kerry was raped 42 times since his abduction. And John Brennan was the one who murdered Kerry. Child number 3 was a 6-year-old girl named Emma from Athens, Georgia. She was raped 106 times, and she was murdered by Joe Biden. And then the 4th child was a 6-year-old boy from Atlanta, Georgia, and his parents called him Bubba. He was an African-American child. And he was murdered by the governor of Texas named Greg Abbott. This child named Bubba was gang raped 84 times. And which I find so disgusting. I mean, these filthy lowlife criminals parade around. Well, you know, the Obamas stole $6 trillion of taxpayer money, and they just taken right out. And all these filthy lowlife criminals who rape and murder children they have basically blank checks to do whatever they want. They're just given millions and millions of dollars. It's well over $1 trillion of taxpayer debt just to rape and murder children in the United States. And 76 children have been gang raped and murdered in the basement of the White House, which is so typical for America. I mean, it's just average and typical. It's unfortunate that these filthy lowlife criminals are considered, you know, by the most to be good people, but I don't really think most people know exactly what they are. And, you know, Obama, this was his 284th child. 284 children this criminal has choked to death or murdered during rape. I think maybe he murdered 6 by driving a knife through the heart. Michelle Obama murdered 4 children by driving a knife through the heart. Isn't that pretty? And they call her the First Lady. She's the First Lady because she had an innocent child laid out on a table before them, took an Illuminati dagger, and bam, right through the heart. Lady, I think not. I'm sorry. It's time for the filthy lowlife criminals of this country to be arrested. But I have good news. It turns out that it seems I'm going to be able to sue the Indiana Attorney General and the Governor of Indiana. The Attorney General has raped 17 children and murdered a 3-year-old Iraqi boy by choking him to death during anal sodomy. And the Indiana Governor has raped now 171 children, and he just murdered his 45th child last weekend. Now, DARPA has slated 17 children to be gang raped and murdered at the Indianapolis MyLab this weekend. And as I said before, the Indiana Attorney General's office told me that if I wanted to see this child trafficking operation in Indianapolis closed down, that I would have to hire a private attorney to file criminal charges against Greg Zeller. He's a filthy lowlife murderer who's acting as Indiana Attorney General, and Mike Pence, who's a really horrible monster of a filthy lying murderer. And it seems that that's going to come true. There are private attorney generals, and a friend of mine who comes from a very wealthy family knows all these attorneys, and it looks like it's going to happen. And then the next step would be for me to take physical possession of the evidence, which I don't know how that's going to happen, but I'm going to do everything I can to put these filthy lying bastards in jail. Thank you. Things are looking up, aren't they? Not for the children, because they keep getting gang raped and murdered, and many of their parents murdered in concentration camps in America. But at least the angels are making sure that they get home to heaven, because most Americans couldn't care less how many people are murdered by their country, which is really owned by England. Thank you. Have a nice day.